So, say you are a bisexual writer writing a story about a bisexual main character. The publisher rejects your manuscript, which is disappointing, but something you have to deal with in the industry. However, not only do they say that they don't want your novel, but they say that you are obviously a cishet woman misrepresenting the queer community and that you need to quote-unquote talk to people who are part of the LGBTQ community because the writing alone that you submitted makes it clear that you are not part of a community that you're trying to write about. What if they then threaten to sue you for speaking up about this experience on your social media? Well, I hate to say it, but this is a real-life event that the author Tally Rose recently lived through. Hey ya out there to all my big brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, and of course, mommies and daddies. Before I start out, I want to make it expressly clear that I do not want to encourage nor do I condone anyone going out to harass anyone else mentioned in this video. As I always say, it's better to show love and support. So, if you want to go follow Tally Rose on her Twitter or buy her book Sea and Flame, go ahead. At most, maybe don't consider this publisher for your story if you're a writer. Just don't act in a way that would get anyone sued. Now, let's get into it. Back on April 6th of this year, Rose posted this to her Twitter account, stating that she just had a publisher say that because she's bisexual, that she isn't part of the LGBT community, and thus is not qualified to write on it. This rightfully stirred commotion surrounding the publisher in question. Who are they? Who would do such a thing? For a time, Rose kept the publisher anonymous, but eventually agreed to share the Twitter handle of the company with the now numerous concerned and curious fans and writers in her replies. Now, I can understand that tweet may sound a little bit drastic, because what publisher in their right mind would say that to someone? It almost sounds like something out of a r/that happened thread. Almost, because we live in a hell world where queerphobia is abound. When first submitting her 10-page preview to see if Hurn, the publisher, would be interested in her story, Rose allegedly noted that she herself is a bisexual woman. And, that makes sense, being that the main character is also a bisexual woman. I'm sure Tally put a good bit of herself into that character, and she wanted to make sure the publisher knew as much when optioning her story. However, past replying back with a simple rejection letter, Megan Hurn, who supposedly wrote this first email, replied with the following. I do encourage you to sit down and talk with people who are part of the LGBTQ community and find out how they actually prefer to be represented in books, since you yourself are not part of that community. The writing alone is clear that you're writing about a community that you aren't part of. Well, if that ain't some kind of discrimination and gatekeeping. Now, I have to say allegedly in relation to Rose mentioning her sexuality in the first email, being that there's no screenshot to prove that fact. But if we work under the assumption that she did they fucking think she was lying about being bisexual? Did they somehow miss all this time that LGBT has a fucking B in it? Did they maybe think that it stands for bacon? Who knows? No doubt they received a great deal of backlash for the initial tweet. I can't really blame anyone who may have slipped into their DMs to ask, hey man, what the fuck? However, instead of apologizing then and there for their own mistake, they sent Rose another email, threatening to sue her. I would like to reach out and let you know that this business is my life and blood. We take every single manuscript submission seriously, and we read through every email we get with respect and thoughtfulness. Okay, but where was the respect and thoughtfulness when you decided to chide her for being ignorant about her own community and fucking asserting that she wasn't even a part of it? Continuing, it reads, I can assure you, we aren't against anything in your book. and the MC being slutty was quite fun to read and a wonderful break from the norm. Rose did indeed state that she assumed their rather drastic reaction had to do with the manuscript itself, showing that the main character is, in the author's own words, a huge slut. There can be a stereotype about bisexuals being promiscuous, so I can sort of understand, to a point, a publisher feeling that it's unstable footing, so to speak. But they outright denied that in their email thread, saying that it's quite fun to read. Additionally, if they aren't against anything in the book, why not publish it? Was the writing quality just not up to snuff in their opinion? Was the fucking sentence structure not great? Was the story segment Rose sent explicit, being that stuff like that is on Hurn's list of what they do not publish? Because if they didn't find the story contents or character to be remiss, and rejected it for other non-character related reasons, maybe they should have listed those as reasons for rejecting the novel instead of, I don't know, pointing and laughing while saying, haha, hetero can't write gays. The email continues. People who know my company, myself, and our ethos know that we support the LGBTQ+ community, and for you to make false statements of slander on your Twitter account without merit after your manuscript is denied shows unprofessionalism and pettiness. We did not say that you're not bi enough to be part of the LGBTQ+ community, nor is that up for us to judge. I can assure you, from here on out, no other authors will receive constructive feedback from us. Alright, because if we pose it as her tweets being done as revenge for her story not getting picked up, that'll entirely take away the biphobia. I don't know how telling someone that their writing is so stank, even though they evidently had no issues with the content or character, that they're obviously not part of the LGBT community, counts as constructive, but moving on. Meg here finishes out the email by saying, I politely ask that you refrain from slandering our business on social media accounts without merit, or we will take legal action. And I am just appalled. Okay, let's take a moment here to dissect all of this. In their own first email, they fucking outright accused her of not being part of the LGBT community. Someone reading that can only really take that one of two ways. Either you, as a publisher, are accusing her of lying by calling herself bisexual when she first submitted the manuscript, or you acknowledge that she is bisexual and are saying that even so, she is still not a member of the LGBT community, meaning that because she is bi, she is not LGBT to you. Nothing in that tweet was a lie because your own email could readily be seen as saying as much. Not to mention that if it's not up to you to judge, then why in the ever-given blocking the Suez Canal hell did you do exactly that in the initial email? For a publisher, these claws have some carb-infused reading comprehension. All this really did was prompt Rose to fix that without merit bit by providing screenshot proof of the emails in question. Also, I find it very fun of them to threaten slander when, as in the old Spider-Man meme, it's only slander if it's spoken. In writing, it's libel. Really shows that they didn't have any outsider look at this before sending it. After even more backlash because those emails were not a good look whatsoever, the publisher fucking deleted most of their social medias and made an apology. Which, by the tone of my voice, I hope you can understand how nasty I find it. We'll be getting into that a little bit later, though. This whole situation was disgusting. Whether they assumed their gaydar was good enough to suss out someone bi-faking based on a 10-page manuscript alone, or if they were insinuating that she didn't belong in the LGBTQ community because she was bi, it's abhorrent. Biphobia is, unfortunately, a very bad and prominent issue even within the LGBT community. Hell, when I was younger, I accidentally perpetuated it by making jokes about a friend who's bi in a male-female relationship being practically straight. I know now that was an incredibly hurtful thing to say, but at the time, it was the norm for the queer communities I was hanging around with to make those sorts of jokes. Hell, even by some of the bisexual people I knew at the time. And Brittany, if you ever see this, I don't think you even know I have this channel, but I am so sorry for doing that to you. But let's get back and examine why the publisher did all of this. Was her character just so slap-in-the-face biphobic to them that they could only assume Rose was straight? Was this character throwing around slurs like nobody's business? Was it otherwise just a poorly crafted or inappropriate manuscript? As I said earlier, the character being promiscuous and, in the preview, breaking off an affair could certainly have added to why they didn't want to publish it. I mean, they obviously have a high moral standard if they feel like they need to grandstand on behalf of the entire LGBT community and tell this bi woman that she's identity faking. But honestly, you only need to look at their apology to see the answer. I don't want to read the whole thing, I'll link it down in the description if you want to, but there's a couple of main things here that Hurn did that kinda pissed me off. There are various types of non-apologies out there, with that meaning when you apologize, but you do it in a way that everyone knows you didn't actually want to apologize. Sometimes it's a subconscious thing, sure, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, especially not in a situation like this. In this case, it feels like Hurn deployed the "I was right, but I'll still say sorry" approach. In the first fucking paragraph, Megantron says, "Upon reading the manuscript, we did our research on the author to find out that on her author website, she looks to represent herself as straight." Yes, I did in fact have to stop myself from automatically correcting their "Does Bruno Mars is gay" sentence. Again, the reading and writing comprehension for a publisher, right? But wow! They already knew that they didn't want the book since this was after they read the manuscript, but still wanted to find dirt on her so they could feel vindicated in rejecting her story. What was this smoking gun that confirms to her that Rose represents herself as straight, you might ask? Being married. That's it. Let that sink in. Not only was this bi woman not enough of a stereotype for them to believe her, but because she's married to a man, it obviously means that she lost all same-sex attraction. You know, because when a gay man marries another gay man, he loses all attraction for any other man other than his husband. Right. Not to mention that if you go to Rose's Twitter, it's filled with posts about her being bisexual, with one of the first they likely would have seen being a post about biphobia. Going back to my note about how poorly I treated my friend in the past, being with any partner doesn't automatically make you a certain sexuality. If you're in a relationship with your same gender, that doesn't suddenly make you a lesbian or gay. You're still bi. If you're in an opposite sex relationship, that doesn't turn you straight. Your partner doesn't negate your bisexual attraction or identity. Fellas, the only way I can explain this is the biphobia. The idea that you aren't bi enough if you are in an opposite sex relationship is so fucking prevalent, and it's disgusting. You shouldn't be ashamed of dating a man or a woman or anyone just because people are itching to revoke your queer card. It makes me fucking irate. Now, if you continue reading their statement, you'll notice that they mention books with reviews saying that they were misrepresented as LGBTQ+ as well. This is apparently in reference to her previous book, which was mislabeled by marketers as a queer novel. I assumed this was done because the author herself is part of the LGBTQ community, and so, when marketing it as such, the publishers of that book were trying to say that the author is not straight, not that the novel itself has queer content. Rose confirms this in a Twitter reply, saying that it was in fact put on LGBT lists because she is not straight. And as an aside here, for anyone in my audience who might be confused or isn't in the community themselves, a lot of people just say gay as an umbrella term to describe non-heterosexual attraction. I myself say that I am gay, even though I'm a guy who's attracted to basically everyone. Unfortunately, this mislabeling did confuse some readers, which Rose has recently published an apology for, stating that she has little control over book marketing, but that she is genuinely sorry to anyone who felt that they were tricked into spending money. As a writer, you have little to no control over how your publisher markets your book. That's just how it is, unfortunately. It wasn't her fault, and certainly wasn't her screaming from the rooftops that her straight romance was actually amazing representation for the LGBTQ community. And fucking yet. Even though none of this was her fault, she still felt the need to apologize. And somehow, her two-tweet apology felt more meaningful and sincere than Hurn's full page. At least to me. All I can say is that they must have been incredibly pressed if they felt that it was their moral obligation to say that her characterization of her own sexuality means that she's obviously not in the LGBTQ community. Because obviously, if you don't fit into the neat little pretty box of what they personally think bisexuality is, then you're a liar and a scumbag to boot. I'm also a little bit obsessed with how they said that they made a snap judgment that she was actually straight, writing about the queer community, when Rose allegedly stated that she was bisexual in her first submission to them. That snap judgment must have snapped their fucking critical thinking skills altogether, I guess. This, to me anyway, this whole thing accentuates a broader spectrum issue that I've seen a lot recently. That is, if you are not X, then you cannot make stories about X. I get the intent is to limit the amount of what some see as bad representation. But limiting the ability to write about bisexual or trans or gay or minority characters to only those who are that denomination restricts not only creativity, but overall representation and reality. We are a minority, meaning that we will likely continue being a minority in spaces used by everyone, like film, books, and TV. Yes, I get not wanting to give the chance to perpetuate bad stereotypes, but if you say cishet writers can only write about cishet people, that puts us right back where we were 20 years ago, where media created in Hollywood or by big publishers is just more cishet romance that ignores the existence of queer people. Not only is this restriction the best way to make majority media minority-free, it's also just fucking dangerous as a great way to pressure people into outing themselves before they're ready or safely able to do so, just so that you can decide if they are trans or bi or gay enough to write on the subject. It's like how if you make a post on Tumblr talking about your experience with a disability or chronic health issue, you'll get 3 anonymous users asking to see your doctor's note saying you actually have that condition, and 1 person calling you a slur. Never mind the fact that when I've been diagnosed with 2, bad medical issues, my doctor's never, given me a fucking note saying, yes, you have this. It's always been, okay, I think you have this, let me write you a prescription. You shouldn't owe anyone shit to talk or write about your own personal experiences, but more and more people are vying for a queer license before you're even allowed to, depict a trans man who doesn't like binding or talk about the harmful pressure to be a quote-unquote gold star lesbian. Now, I know that Hurn's email said that they wanted her to go do more research before continuing with the book. And of course, do your research when writing about a group that you are not a part of, obviously. But as a publisher, it is never your place to dictate who is of what persuasion just based on vibes and the contradiction of what they have blatantly told you. I don't know if the manager of Hurn is a person in the community herself, but even then, there would be no excuse for this. This apology is mediocre at best, and I do not blame the author if she decided to not accept it. It's not her job to do that, and it's also not her job to mother this publishing company and teach them nicely how to not act bigoted. I think a good place for them to start would be to just, I don't know, maybe not call anyone who doesn't write the queers in a way they find palatable an imposter. Here's a funky and wild thought. Maybe we should just stick to the quality of written content instead of trying to virtue signal based on how you assume the LGBT community will perceive something. As the author said herself, if they didn't like the content she submitted, they could have just sent her a normal rejection letter. Maybe even said something that they didn't allow the topic of affairs or infidelity in their publications if they absolutely had to give a reason. Which they don't. There will inevitably be some people who don't like how the main character is depicted. But therein comes the age-old mantra of don't like, don't read. Maybe, and I fucking really stress the maybe here, if they didn't know, or she didn't tell them her identity, they could have suggested the novel be baited in the community further. But even then, it would certainly not give them the right to say that her writing alone makes it obvious that she's an outsider that they need to gatekeep. This story does have a happy ending though, as Rose's novel, As Played by Gods, is currently being published by a different company and is set to release sometime this year. Being that the publisher who picked it up is LGBTQ owned and run, I think that the community will like it just fine. I got really passionate about this one, you guys. I'm sorry if it's a little bit too sparky. It's just that this hits really close to home for me. Also, to put it out there, I did reach out in an email to Rose saying I was making this video, asking if she had a statement that she wanted to make other than what was on her Twitter, and asking if she felt comfortable sharing a screenshot of the first email she sent where she says that she's bisexual, since it would be a helpful but entirely not necessary addition if she didn't want to send it. And I, never got a response back. The next day, she did post this now deleted tweet saying that some freaks were flooding her with requests to share the manuscript she sent in, so I assume my email got lumped in with those. At least I hope that's the case and not that she mistook my email for asking something like that, since I don't think I even mentioned her manuscript. In any case, thanks for getting to the end. I know it was a long one. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want. As always, you don't have to, but if you do, I'll get to see you in the next video. I hope you have a scrabdangulous day. Later, skater. Now, I know that Hurn's email said that